The Assyrians, from what we remember from last time we met, the Assyrians are a serious threat to the people of Jerusalem. And just a quick little reminder of who we're dealing with here is, remember we played around with this a little bit, and we had Israel we're zooming way in, we have Israel being the northern kingdom there, and Judah being the southern kingdom here. And if you zoom way out, you have this massive empire who has moved in, and they've conquered the north, and they've taken the people out of the land. And this was the result of Israel's idolatry. But Assyria remember we called them the big cat and the tiny little mice, right? Assyria was Tom, and the nations of Israel and around Israel, these are the little mice. Well, the Syrians came in and wiped out Syria. The Assyrians came in and wiped out Syria. They wiped out Israel, and now they have their eyes set on Judah in the south. And things in Judah haven't really been so great lately. They've had some serious idolatry in the land, but now they've started to turn a corner a little bit, a good corner. Now Hezekiah is their king, and he's one of the best kings they've ever had. Hezekiah follows the Lord with all of his heart, and he's made some serious reforms, including removing the idolatrous places in the land, breaking down their idols. They even went up into the northern cities of Israel and broke the idols up there. They're really trying to eradicate idol worship in the land. He repaired the house of the Lord. He brought about a pretty serious revival, and he's done some pretty good political things, like fortifying the wall of Jerusalem and building what's known today as Hezekiah's Tunnel, which diverted the water from outside of Jerusalem. Hey, listen, if the opposing armies come, why should they come and find water? Let's divert that water underground and into the city so we have water and they don't have water. And so he's done some really good things. But the question that remains at this point is Hezekiah's reforms, are they enough? Are they enough to stay God's hand of judgment upon the nation of Judah? God's hand of judgment came upon the nation of Israel. Will Hezekiah's reforms change that for Judah, or is it a little bit too little, too late? So that's kind of where we are right now. And the text kind of reminds us of where we are. If you look at where we are in 2 Kings 18, check this out. We get a little bit of a repeated action here. Now, in the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against Samaria and besieged it. That's kind of a reference to the fighting the siege that took place up here in Israel. We already read about that. We already studied that. But we're just kind of repeating some of that here in 2 Kings 18. At the end of 3 years, they captured it being a reference to the city of Samaria, the capital city of the north. They captured it, and in the 6th year of Hezekiah, which was the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Israel, Samaria was captured. And we're calling that 722 BC. As we're saying, 722 is when the northern kingdom of Israel fell. Oops. Then the king of Assyria carried Israel away into exile to Assyria and put them in Halah and on the Habor, the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes, because they did, and this is the key here, because they did not obey the voice of the Lord their God. God told them in His Word, God told them specifically in His Word that they needed to abandon the idols. And that if they would not abandon the idols, judgment would come and they'd be taken out of their land. But they did not obey what God said in His Word, but transgressed His covenant, even all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded. They would neither listen nor do it. They rebelled against what God said. They worshipped and served other gods, the Israelites up north. And in the year around 725, 724, Israel reaches the city gates of Samaria. Samaria holds out for 3 years, but by the end of that time, in the 3rd year, they fall. 722. We saw all this in 2 Kings 17. It's all repeating it because it's a big thing. But the real reason why this is mentioned here, the real point of it is their disobedience against what God had said resulted in their judgment. Samaria fell. But now, as we mentioned, the Assyrians turned their... This is an eyeball. I look like an eyeball. Towards... That's my best drawing. That's the best I could do. I wasn't skilled. Maybe an arrow would be better. They turned their gaze. So I need to get people who could draw like on these slides a little better than what I do. But they turned their gaze onto Judah in the south, and we see that here in the next verse. Now, verse 13. Now, in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and seized them. So what we kind of have here is, you might remember, does anyone remember the name of Hezekiah's father who submitted to the Assyrians and paid them off? He was a bad king down in the south, one of the worst. Ahaz. It's easy to remember that because one of the worst kings in the north was Ahab. And so you only have to change one letter to really, Ahaz, and you have one of the worst guys in the south. Well, his dad, Ahaz, he was submissive to the Assyrians, and he was just happy to stay alive. So he made alliances with these idolaters. But Hezekiah rebelled against the Assyrians because their interests and his were not aligned. He wasn't willing to submit to this idolatrous nation. But things weren't exactly peachy in Assyria, so this is kind of a little bit of a time frame of what's going on. The first king you see there on the left, Tiglath-Pileser, he dies in 727, and his son, you'll see Shalmaneser V, he takes over, and this is the king that conquers Assyria. This is the king that invades Israel and conquers Israel and takes them away. But shortly after he conquers them, he dies. And the next king comes in, and he rules Sargon for a little while, up until about 705. He's killed in battle in 705, and Sennacherib takes over. So that's kind of what's going on. So there's a little bit of turmoil going on there in Assyria. We'll talk more about that in a second. But you'll see over on the right side of it that Hezekiah's rule, depending on whether you count his co-regency at 729 or his sole regency right around 715, from around 715 to 686, he's ruling while some of this stuff's going on in Assyria. But for the Assyrians, they are currently turning their gaze, right when Sennacherib comes into the picture, they're turning their gaze on Judah. But they had been having some problems with Babylon. So Hezekiah had a little bit of a reprieve here for a little bit of time, and Israel had a little bit of a reprieve, but Assyria had to kind of reassert its dominance against Babylon, and so Hezekiah was pretty happy with that. Hezekiah was pretty happy that these guys, for a little bit of time, the Assyrians are dealing with the stuff that's happening over here, instead of they're dealing with a much bigger cat than these tiny little mice over here. And Hezekiah has a little bit of peace for a little bit of time there. So he's happy about it, and he doesn't want his people to be submissive to these idolaters, which we saw, and he's not alone. So what ends up happening is, on the political scene, is that, just giving you a little bit of background here, the Phoenicians, these guys are a lot of times, they're hard to conquer. So these guys end up being peaceful people. They end up not fighting with a lot of people. Well, they end up they stop paying taxes to Assyria. And Judah stops paying taxes to the Assyrians. And Egypt over here they're starting to get involved as, they're not loving the fact that these Assyrians are coming in and taking all this land, and now they're feeling threatened. And so this whole area is kind of like up in arms about what's going on with the Assyrians. And these guys kind of start to form something like a coalition, something like NATO, except there's only 3 of them. By the way, I don't really want to even be in NATO anymore. I've had enough of NATO. Let them fight their own wars. I don't want to be involved in any of it. But these guys they're kind of like, in their minds, kind of like banding together. Well, Sennacherib comes in right around 701, and he conquers Phoenicia. So now Syria is gone, Phoenicia's gone, Israel is gone. The Philistines and the Ammonites and the Moabites and the Edomites, they all submit to Assyria. And so the only thing you have left at this point is Judah and Egypt. And everybody else has submitted to the Assyrians. And so the Assyrians are a major, major threat. And Hezekiah is kind of without allies at this point. The only ally he kind of pseudo has is Egypt, that broken reed of a staff. You know what I mean? That Egypt is not going to really help you out so much. And so he feels that he has no choice but to submit to Assyria and pay up. Check this out. And this is why I said this morning, there's a little bit of a crack in Hezekiah's armor. Verses 14 through 16. Then Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria at Lachish, saying, and I'll show you where that is, saying, I have done wrong. Withdraw from me. In fact, let's do it right now. If we were to zoom in, remember we talk about taking a little line from the north of the Dead Sea and going straight across to the Mediterranean. You go right around halfway, about a third the way, and you have Jerusalem. Well, here's Jerusalem, and here's Lachish. And as the bird flies, check this out. 28, 27 miles. So what's 30 miles away? Is it Allentown? Bethlehem is probably a little less than that. So basically, the Assyrian army has wiped out all these places and get them to submit, and now he's created a barrier between Jerusalem and just about his only ally remaining. And he's 30 miles away. He's basically on the doorstep. He's basically in Allentown sending a message here saying, you better give up. All right, we're coming for you next. We took down all these guys, and we're coming for you. And there's no one who can stop us. Check this out. So then Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria at Lachish, saying, I have done wrong. Withdraw from me. Not exactly a high point of Hezekiah's career. One of the best kings Judah's ever had, but this is certainly a moment of weakness when the enemy is kind of breathing down his neck. And he says, I have done wrong. Kind of like preemptively agreeing to whatever terms Assyria's king is going to come up with. I have done wrong. Withdraw from me. Basically, leave me alone. Whatever you impose on me, I will bear. I'll pay it. Whatever you want, we're going to pay it. Not a high point. Not a high point in Hezekiah's career. And the king of Assyria kind of takes advantage of this. So the king of Assyria, Sennacherib, required of Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. So the numbers work out like this. The silver is said to be worth about 4.5 million in today's economy, which nationally speaking, I mean, listen, how much has USAID given away? What did we give away? $50 million for a transgender play in like Somalia or something like that? I don't know what we did. Some ridiculous thing like that. I mean, we give away money. The Democrats give away money like it's candy bars. You know what I mean? But 4.5 million in today's economy, it's some money. It's not like breaking the bank money, but it's some money. The gold is worth about 35.2 million. In total, they gave away 40 million, which was basically equivalent to one play in Guatemala or whatever the Democrats gave away. So really, in the end, you know what they needed? They needed Elon. They needed Elon to go in there and make sure that they weren't giving away too much. They gave away about what's equivalent to about $40 million to pay off the king of Assyria. That's a few dollars. And look at how Hezekiah comes up with the money. And this is the worst part of it. This is like one of the biggest stains on Hezekiah's life. Hezekiah gave him all the silver which was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasuries of the king's house. He paid off this ungodly, idolatrous king by taking money from the temple. Basically taking offering money from the temple. Taking the Lord's money, the treasuries, the temple treasuries, and not just the temple treasuries, but the stuff. Like the adornments, which were made of gold. At that time, Hezekiah cut off the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord and from the doorposts which Hezekiah, king of Judah, had overlaid, and gave it to the king of Assyria. He says, listen, we need this gold. We're going to cut it off of, we're going to take it from the house of God. These decorations we made, that we overlaid this wood with gold, we're going to take it off and we're going to pay it, or else we're going to lose our nation. It's in my mind a terrible error in judgment where you have a king who's trying to make peace, but he's doing it, he's not doing it the right way. That's what I'm seeing. At the same time, he's been diverting the water. He's been fortifying Jerusalem. He's trying to make peace, but he's also kind of preparing for war because he probably knows we just can't keep this up. Where's the money going to come from? The money train is eventually going to end, and it's going to run out. But typically when you pay someone off, Joe Biden knows about that stuff, or his son does. Typically when you pay someone off, they leave you alone. At least that's how I understand how it works. I've never paid anyone off in my life. I've never been paid off. I don't think I'll ever understand that experience, and I don't want to. But typically, when you read the Bible, when you pay off a foreign king, they leave you alone. And you subject yourselves to them, and they go on their merry way, and you become a vassal king to this opposing king. In other words, you become their servant. But that's not what happens. That's not what happens here. Because Assyria, they're not satisfied with the situation. Here's a king in Israel, in Judah. This king had rebelled against us. He had stopped paying taxes to us. I don't want him to be king anymore. It's kind of how I feel about the guy in Ukraine, the guy that dances around, the president of Ukraine who dances around in tutus and all that stuff, and then becomes the president. He dances around in like ladies' clothing and all that stuff on the... I don't see the videos of Zelensky dancing. You got to see this. It's wild. I mean, he's dancing around in like the wildest... Paul, you've seen some of these. Isn't it crazy? I mean, what this guy, the president, dancing around like... like this, and like almost women's clothing type stuff, and he's the president of Ukraine. If I were Trump, I'd say, we'll make the deal with you if this guy resigns and if you have elections. That's where I'm at. All right. Why deal with two dictators when you could deal with one? I don't care. I don't care if there are two dictators over there or one personally, but typically here you'd have a situation where paying someone off they leave you alone, but Assyria's like, no, we got to get Zelensky out. That's how the king of Assyria, to the king of Assyria, Hezekiah is Zelensky, right? He wants Hezekiah out, and he wants to bring in another king, and he wants to take the people and deport them to another land and bring other people into. So in other words, Thank you for the money. Thank you for the 40 million. But we're coming anyway. We're coming anyway. Could you imagine? Could you imagine like the two-faced, double-crossing business of Sennacherib and the Assyrians? And so Assyria sends messengers to Jerusalem calling for Jerusalem's unconditional and complete surrender in verses 17 through 18. And then the king of Assyria sent Tartan and Rabsaris and the Rabshakeh from Lachish. Remember, that's where Allentown is compared to where we are, I think, somewhere in there. I think as the bird flies, I think Allentown is in the range of 25 to 30 miles. I could be wrong about that. So he sends these three officials from Lachish to Hezekiah with a large army to Jerusalem. So he sends this army with these officials. So they went up and came to Jerusalem. And when they went up, they came and stood by the conduit of the upper pool, which is on the highway of the fuller's field, outside the walls of Jerusalem. When they called to the king, Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna, the scribe, and Joah, the son of Asaph, the recorder, came out to them. So basically, they send these three messengers. They send these three messengers up to give this message. And what Assyria says, what the king of Assyria writes about Hezekiah is that I have him trapped like a bird in a cage. He actually writes that historically. We could read about that outside of the Bible, where Sennacherib says that he has Hezekiah trapped like a bird in a cage. That's how he feels. He's got him. He's got him. He's got him. Listen to this. I'm actually going to read this to you. I think you might find this interesting. As for Hezekiah, this is Sennacherib. As for Hezekiah, the Judean, who did not submit to my yoke, I laid siege to 46 of his strong cities, fortresses, and countless small villages in their vicinity, and conquered them by means of building siege rams, drawing battering rams up close, hand-to-hand combat of infantry, mines, breaches, and assault ladders. Himself, Hezekiah himself, I enclosed in Jerusalem, his royal city, like a bird in a cage. I laid out forts against him in order to repel him from going out of the gate of his city. His towns, which I plundered, I separated from his territory and handed over to Mittinti, king of Ashdod, Padai, king of Ekron, and Silibel, king of, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, king of Gaza. And thus I reduced the size of his country. This Hezekiah, the fearsome splendor of my rule overwhelmed. And so he's got him. He's got him trapped. This account that we're looking at, this account of Sennacherib coming in and invading or invading Judah and laying Jerusalem under siege, we can find that in three different places in Scripture. We find it here, in 2 Chronicles 32, and in Isaiah 36. And so I read each of those accounts and compared each of those accounts against this account. And what I noticed is that the Isaiah account is almost exactly the same. It's almost exactly the same as this account in 2 Kings. And the 2 Chronicles account is pretty close. They say the same thing. But Sennacherib sends these three messengers who demand to talk to Hezekiah. Hezekiah doesn't go out to him. Instead, Hezekiah sends three messengers. It's like a game of chess. You send three guys, I send three guys. It's kind of like Trump and his tariffs. You have 25% tariff, we have 25% tariff, something like that. But listen to the message that Assyria has. Listen to the message that Sennacherib gives to Hezekiah, not just to Hezekiah, but to the three officials and really to the people. And he starts by talking about Egypt. And hey, listen, you think you've got Egypt's help? Egypt is not a reliable ally. Then Rabshakeh said to them, say now to Hezekiah, thus says the great king. You might be you might be a governor. You might be a little king. You might be the 51st. What did Trump call Trudeau? The 51st governor? a governor of Canada. You might be a king, but I'm the great king, is what Sennacherib says. Thus says the great king, the king of Assyria. What is this confidence that you have? You say, but they are only empty words that you're saying. You say, I have counsel and strength for the war. I'm ready to go. Now on whom do you rely that you have rebelled against me? Now, behold, you rely on the staff of this crushed reed, this broken staff, Egypt, even on Egypt, on which if a man leans, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who rely on him. By the way, Sennacherib's right about Egypt. Egypt's not a reliable ally. Okay, they're not a reliable ally at all. Egypt will not help Jerusalem. But the Assyrians make it known, listen, Egypt's not going to help you. Where they really start messing up is they say, the Lord's not going to help you either. The Lord's not going to help you either. Nobody's going to. Your gods aren't going to help you, they claim. Look at verses 23 through 25. But if you say to me, we trust in the Lord our God, wouldn't we say that? You know, we trust in the Lord. That's the right answer, isn't it? The right answer is to always trust in the Lord. But if you say this, we trust in the Lord our God, is it not he whose high places and whose altars Hezekiah has taken away and has said to Judah and to Jerusalem, you shall worship before this altar in Jerusalem? I mean, listen, Hezekiah took all those worship places away. That's the God you're going to trust in? What's the error here? What's the error here? Yeah. He doesn't know his Bible. He doesn't know his Bible. That's the real problem here. He doesn't know his Bible. He misunderstands his Bible. So it's not his Bible. He worships false gods. Well, he worships his god Nisroch. Well, anyway, he thinks he understands. He thinks he understands what the Jews believe, but he doesn't understand it at all. He thinks he understands the Lord, but he doesn't understand. He thinks, hey, listen, the Lord had all these worship sites, and your king took them all away. And that's how powerful your God is, that he was overcome by this puny little king. I mean, he's got bad theology. He's got some bad theology here that causes him to make a pretty serious error. Anyway, let's keep reading. Now, therefore, come, make a bargain with my master, the king of Assyria, and I will give you 2,000 horses if you're able on your part to set riders on them. Listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to give you 2,000 horses to fight against us. That's how confident we are. We'll give you supplies. We'll give you tanks, and you can fight against us with the tanks we give you. Something like that is what it would sound like today. I'll give you 2,000 tanks, and let's fight. Come on out and do it. I mean, isn't that arrogant? This guy's confident. He's got what's the word I'm looking for? He's got a chutzpah. Chutzpah. I don't know what that even means. Hopefully that's like a kosher word. I don't know. Yeah, he's got chutzpah. He's got gumption. Did you say gumption? Nice, good. At the same time, Jinx, Coke, Infinity. So listen, we're going to help you fight, and we're still going to demolish you, okay? And then they lie about the Lord's intention and the whole process and make these claims and then say, how then can you repulse one official of the least of my master's servants? You can't even take down one of our dudes and rely on Egypt for chariots and horsemen. I mean, you wouldn't stand a chance. One of the most appalling things they do happens next, where they claim that the Lord is on their side and that God came up and told them to go conquer. Your God? It sounds like a modern Pentecostal. God told me this. God told me that Trump would win the last election against Biden and remain president. Well, some of you might think that actually happened, but he didn't win it. I mean, maybe they cheated. I don't know, but The prophecy was false. I think we all kind of think that was not really a fair election. But they say, yeah, the Lord came up and told us to go against Jerusalem, and they mix some truth about Egypt with error about the Lord, trying to manipulate the people into surrender. Have I now come up without the Lord's approval against this place? The Lord said to me, go up against this land and destroy it. God told me, your God told me to go destroy Jerusalem. Truth or lie? Lie. 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 Then Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, and Shebna and Joah, the three officials of Judah, said to Rabshakeh, speak now to your servants. Hey, speak in Aramaic, for we understand it. And do not speak with us in Judean in the hearing of the people who are on the wall. Listen, tell us what's going on. We know your language. Don't speak in the language of that the people can understand in. Why do they want to do that? Why do the Israelite officials, the Judahite officials, want them to speak in a foreign language that the people of the city don't know? To prevent discouragement, to prevent fear, to prevent maybe even rebellion against the king. But look at what Rabshakeh says to them in verse 27. Has my master sent me only to your master and to you to speak these words, and not to the men who sit on the wall who are doomed to eat their own dung and drink their own urine with you? These guys are going to, do that. I couldn't imagine having that on my plate for dinner. All right, but the fact is, if this siege continues, that's what's going to happen. They're going to be drinking their own urine in order to survive, is the claim. Of course, the people of Israel, the people of Jerusalem know something that maybe Sennacherib doesn't know. What do they know? What's that? Well, they know that there's water that's coming in from the Gihon spring and down to the pool of Siloam because Hezekiah moved that tunnel, and now they have water. But they also know their Bibles a little better than Sennacherib too, right? So that helps. Then Rabshakeh stood and cried with a loud voice in Judean, saying, hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus says the king, do not let Hezekiah deceive you. Listen, don't listen to this, Hezekiah. Don't let him deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you out of my hand, from my hand. Nor let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, saying, the Lord will surely deliver us, and this city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Don't trust in your king, and don't trust in your God. Man. Don't listen to Hezekiah. Instead, surrender and live. Verses 31 through 32. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for thus says the king of Assyria, make your peace with me, and come out to me, and eat each of his vine, and each of his fig tree, and drink each of the waters of his own cistern. In other words, you stay in your land and eat and drink your food for now, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of olive trees and honey, that you may live and not die. Man, he really sugarcoated that, didn't he? Don't listen to your king, don't listen to your God. Live, enjoy your land, and I'm going to take you away to paradise. I'm going to take you away to a place just like home. You're going to love it. Meanwhile, it'll take them away as captives. Take them away as servants, as slaves. It'll take them into captivity where they'll die. But his offer is, you surrender to us or you die. And we come back to another appeal against the Lord. But do not listen to Hezekiah when he misleads you, saying, the Lord will deliver us. Hey, listen, The Lord won't deliver you, Assyria says, Sennacherib says. And this is how I know that your God won't deliver you. Has any one of the gods of the nations delivered his land from the hand of the king of Assyria? None of these other gods did. What makes your God any different than any of these other gods? These other gods didn't deliver their lands from my hand, and your God won't deliver you from my hand either. Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim, Hena, and Ivah? Have they delivered Samaria from my hand? Wow. These gods up in Israel didn't deliver their gods, and these other places didn't deliver their people, Who among the gods of the lands have delivered their land from my hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem from my hand? Not only will the Lord not deliver you, not only will he not deliver you, but he's not able to. He's not able to deliver you. Your God is no different than these other false gods, and no God can stand against us. 2 Chronicles 32:17 says that the Assyrians, quote, wrote letters to insult the Lord God of Israel. They do not understand the Lord. They do not understand, I would say, they don't understand their Bibles. They're like lost people looking at the Word of God and trying to make some sense to it. They don't understand Jerusalem's God. They don't understand what God said in His Word. But they do understand one thing, and that's how to intimidate people. They understand that. They understand that well, and they want the people of Jerusalem to be afraid. Notice Jerusalem's response. But the people were silent and answered him not a word, for the king's commandment was, do not answer him. Then Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna, the scribe, and Joah, the son of Asaph, the recorder, these three officials, came to Hezekiah with their clothes torn and told him the words of Rabshakeh. The people say nothing. They don't answer these preposterous claims, these false charges, these false doctrine claims that this false king has made, this foreign king has made. They go right to the king, they mourn over it, and notice Hezekiah's response. And we're just going to look at one verse of chapter 19 and save the rest for next time. And when King Hezekiah heard it, he tore his clothes, covered himself with sackcloth, these are ways of mourning, and entered the house of the Lord, the temple complex. At the lowest point of his life, at this, his moment of great despair, Hezekiah goes to the Lord. He goes to the house of the Lord and depends on his God. And we'll see that next week. We'll break that down next week. And that's exactly what we need to do during the biggest difficulties that we ever face. Regardless of what people say about the Lord, regardless of what they say about his power and his ability to do things, regardless of their misunderstandings of the Lord and what he said in his word, we need to trust in the Lord when difficulties arise. We need to trust in the Lord regardless of our fears, because these people, surely they were afraid. Everyone around them had capitulated. Everyone around them had fallen. And so that would be scary. They need to trust in the Lord. We need to trust in the Lord regardless of our fears. We need to trust in him regardless of what man says. And there are people out there today who will make all types of claims, false claims about our God. We need to recognize those claims as false and trust in him regardless of what those false claims are. And we need to turn to him and be faithful to him regardless of the circumstances of life and regardless of how bad things may look at that moment. Because at this moment in Jerusalem, at this moment of what we're reading here, it's never looked worse. It looks at this moment to a person living in Jerusalem that their city is about to be destroyed and that they're going to be starved to death or they're going to be forced to be taken captive. Their king is not willing to budge, Hezekiah, at this point, and he's right. And the other king will stay there until they starve to death and die. It looks bad. It looks bad. And it looks bad for Hezekiah. But during those terrible times, they are to trust in the Lord, regardless of how bad it looks. Next week, we'll continue looking at this passage, and we'll see some more about what Hezekiah does, how he responds, and continue to track this threat against Jerusalem. In the meantime, let's take our hymnals and turn to hymn number 402. If you're not